All right, what's going on, guys? So this is my review of my custom set of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers show accurate Dinozords. So basically, what I wanted for my collection, because I already have the Soul of Chigokin Dinozords or Megazord. I got the SOC Titanus and the SOC Dragonzord. I got the Legacy Dragonzord. I got the Legacy Megazord. But as you all know, these Zords can form 3 different modes. Sorry about that. I got a bit of a cold or something going on, but I'm trying to get over. But these Zords form 3 different modes. And so for my display, I want to keep my SOC, since that is the most expensive one, and probably I'm just be straight up. I honestly don't like transforming my SOC Megazord. I like to keep it in Megazord mode and not mess with it too much, because I'm just always afraid I'm gonna break something on it. And because it's such a rare item now, hard to come by. I know they just re-released that set that had the Dragonzord in it and all the other 5 Dinozords, but still a hard set to come by. You break something on it, you can't just replace it easily. So I don't like to fidget with it too much. I like to just kind of let it be in this display mode as Megazord and be just that. I won't even put it in Mega Dragonzord mode, just because I don't want to run the risk of the joints becoming weak over time from just trying to hold up. Even though it has die-cast metal, I know over time, if it having the Dragonzord on top of it in Mega Dragonzord mode would wear down on it eventually. So I just let them all 3 just kind of be more so like a Zoo Ranger display, where you see the 3 different ones: Megazord, Dragonzord, or excuse me, Dragon Caesar, Daijujin, and King Brachian, all 3 together. So that would be my main Megazord that I would have. And then for my Legacy Megazord, I like to keep that one in tank mode, and I did a repaint on that particular one, just to give it a little bit more life and not have it look so much like a toy. It's actually, I don't even, as a matter of fact, that's not even the one I have. Is not even the Legacy one. It's I think the 2010 Megazord, because I got that one back in 2010. Back when I was in college, I saw that, and that's actually when I think my toy collecting started, when I saw that, because I never had the original Megazord as a kid. So I went back and I got that one, and it still don't come close to being like the original Megazord, like '93. It's too slim, it's too skinny. It's got the Zord builder ports on it, and I don't like the Zord builder ports at all, me personally. So, but I still got it because it's nostalgia, and it's nice to have in the collection, and it's probably the easiest one to transform without fear of it breaking. But I do leave that one in tank mode. So, and that leaves one other mode, which would be the individual Zords, and that's what I really wanted. And as nice as the SOC Zords look in the individual Zord modes, they're still not as show accurate, because they're not as chunky, not as bulky as they should be in the individual Zord modes. But it looks like I found myself a workaround here. So Super 7, and I'll go ahead and go into a Super 7 start. Well, Super 7 recently are the latest ones to give us these Zords. So they've given us Tyrannosaurus here, which I went back and added some details there on the head right there to kind of make it a little more show accurate. But for the most part, I did some panel lining here around the neck area too, as you can see. But for the most part, they did a good job on these. It looks like the guy in the suit, and I'm not gonna go into full detail on these. I'm just doing it because the part of the set as a whole, because this has already been out. Most of y'all have already seen it. Y'all know what the deal is with this right here. And same goes for Dragonzord. And they're great. They're great, accurate representations of the show and the suit actors and the design of the costume. So I love what they gave us there. The only problem is they have not given us the rest of the Zords. And I don't know if they're going to give us the rest of the Zords. I know there's a lot of different things going on in Super 7 right now. I'm not going to get into it because I don't know all the particulars on it. I know a lot of y'all toy tubers, y'all go into detail with the toy news, so I'll let y'all do y'all thing with that. But I still wanted a full set, because I think they started, did some great things here. So that's 2 of the Zords from Super 7. The other two Zords are from the previous owners of the Power Rangers license, and that would be Bandai. So towards the end of the run for Bandai, they started to come out with their legacy Zords, which were legacy accurate versions of the individual Zords, and they gave them to us. And when I remember when they first came out, everybody was kind of all like, "Oh, why did they give us these? They don't transform. What's the point of giving us these?" My only gripe with them was they didn't have any paint apps. It looked like a kind of like just a quick money grab. They were coming towards the end of the license, and they just kind of were like, whatever, here, we had this, waiting in the chamber, so we're going to here release it for you guys. And because you see on all the promo shots of those things, they had paint on it. There's a little more detail, but as far as paint apps go. But one of the things I do like about what they did was they actually gave us, a nice size, because these Zords they're actually pretty sizable, and they got, they gave us some good articulation. So, like the head moves, these tusks move here. The trunk is articulated. This head right here actually pops forward like that. So it has some neck articulation in there. And I went and painted the details around the neck on this one here. And I brought out a lot of like just individual details that I was comparing to reference photos. And I noticed that they touched on a lot of the details of the puppets that were used for the series. And they have a lot of those on the feet and the legs, things like that. They have a lot of that added in there. So it looks, when you compare it, you can start to see all the little finer details that are very accurate. One of the things I didn't like about it, like I said, was the paint apps. So they actually use, this is supposed to be bright yellow, but they use almost like a reflective type, like mustard yellow gold paint on here. I was gonna go back and fix that and repaint that, but I didn't feel like doing it because after a while, you're trying to customize 5 different Zords, takes a toll on you, and you kind of. And I've been sick, as you can still hear. But I did, I think it looks good enough from being on the shelf, and even like these little details up here, like these little arrows over here. There's like all these small little fine details that they had in there that I just had to go back and add paint to. I think it makes for a nice piece of the collection. And I think that this, along with the other one, it pairs up well with the Super 7 as far as scaling goes. So that's what I really like about that one. For this one, I didn't have to do anything constructive-wise. I just had to add paint details to it, tape it off really well. And I actually used a aluminum silver paint, the metallic from Rust-Oleum. And it worked really well. And then I came back and added I used a paint marker. I used a paint marker, but not actually using the paint marker. I actually just kind of like used a paintbrush from the paint marker. And I went back and touched it up because if you have to paint an action figure, I know a lot of people go back and use Mr. Hobby Super Clear. That works good as far as sealing your paint in your projects, but just in general, as for a really good paint that works well, I get the Painter's brand paint markers, and I like to just kind of like pump them out, and then I get like a good sizable amount onto like a sheet of something, and then I get a paintbrush and I use those because that paint it covers really well. It's acrylic and it doesn't smear. It dries fast and it has good color on it. Only problem is it's limited. That particular brand has a limit of how many different colors options it has. So you have to mix some if you want to go for a particular color. So that's the only drawback on that one. But I think for what I did, for what I needed it for, it came out nice. So I'm good with it. Other one here from that Bandai collection that they did was the Saber-tooth Tiger. And they actually did 3. They actually did do the Tyrannosaurus, which, if I had to compare the two, I would honestly say that the Bandai version of the Tyrannosaurus looks more accurate to the show than the Super 7 mold does. The Super 7 mold is very nice and is I would say it's a close second. The only difference is they gave us the paint apps and the articulation, or better articulation, than Bandai gave us with their Tyrannosaurus. But if you look at reference photos or go back and look at old episodes of Power Rangers or Zoo Ranger, you'll see like the suit that the actor was in for the Tyrannosaurus, the shape up is just like the Bandai. So Bandai did their homework, and if they kept the brand or the license rather, they probably would have given us, you know, down the line, we would have got some better things from them, because I think Bandai had the Power Rangers, you know, license for the longest time. They were, I guess, the original holders of the IP and the license, and they were kind of like finding their way from transitioning from the toy aesthetic aspect of things into the collector realm, and they were getting better. I would love to have seen what they would have done further down the line with some of the Megazords and some of the other stuff. But to me, I think looking at this, because like I said, most of this is all Bandai. As far as like you look at shape of this, like the chunkiness of the legs on this saber-tooth tiger, that came from that they made that details on the legs. Now, one of the things I had to go back and do, because they did the same thing with the Mastodon, was they had a holographic sticker right here. So in order for me to paint it, I had to take it off and then spray paint the saber-tooth tiger. After I spray painted it, I had to go back and I had to take a pencil and I had to draw this design on there. And then I had to go back and do a really like tightly fine job painting that design back onto the side of this saber-tooth tiger here. But that was the only part I had to go back and like paint back over, because they didn't have the stickers for it. And then the stickers won't stick again anyway. The adhesion on the back of it is like it's like glue or something like that. Like, and it only uses a small amount. So once you take it off, it doesn't have that much adhesion left to it to stick back on. So I would have had to do something different anyway. There is a company that makes decals for this particular set, or at least for this particular Zord from Bandai and the Tyrannosaurus, but they're sold out, and I don't know. I tried to contact them about getting more, and they never responded. So I don't know if they're still active or still, you know, printing labels for stuff or not. But that would have been nice to have. But I thought this was a nice workaround. I was able to, you know, come up with something and draw that design on there, so that worked out pretty good. And then I just took a Gundam pen. I went back and panel lined all the smaller areas and the fine areas along the body. Painted the face. I painted the inside of the mouth and painted the back of the, you know, the back of the throat. Pause. To give it that more realistic look, like it's actually a robot, you know, Zord, and give it more detail on it. Like I said, it has a lot of articulation, tail moves. It does all this stuff you want. You can shoot the laser. Well, it can actually shoot the laser. You know what I mean? It goes into motion as if it's going to shoot the laser. The legs are articulated. You can give them nice little poses. It has a curve. One of the things it actually does that the show didn't do was that it has this pivot joint at the waist, so you can kind of get it. I mean, it doesn't pivot a lot, but it does enough. It just gives you some more articulation. The head goes up and down. The mouth closes. The tusks don't move on this thing, but I mean, you don't really need them to move anyway. But for me, I'm not gonna be doing a whole lot of posing with this stuff. I might do some figure photography with this, but that'd be about it. Shit. But yeah, I'm just doing some figure photography. Might be about all I do with this thing, but just to have them on the shelf and have them look, you know, the way I want them to look, and just have them, you know, pose up there in the display. It's gonna that'll be great for my collection anyway. So I'm happy with the way that looked. So that's the Bandai ones that I have in that collection. Oh, before I do that, one other thing I did add on here. I did go back and take, I used it on my 89 Batmobile, my McFarlane custom Batmobile for the step pad. I actually ordered this from Amazon. This is a material like a rubber padding, like for that you would put on like the bottom of your shoe, or just to give grip, you know, things like that. If your shoe is like, I guess it's made for ladies, if their heel loses the grip on the bottom of it, it's made for that, I guess, for that. But what I did was I took it and I cut it out and along there, and I added it on the side of this was supposed to be a tire. They made this part right here, but they didn't have it painted. It was still silver or whatever. I painted it black, and then I went back and super glued this little section on here, so it looks like it has actual rubber tires on there, just to give it a more authentic look. And I thought that came out pretty cool. So that worked out. So I mean, that one looks pretty good. But those are the two I got from the Bandai collection. So I have thus far the two from Super 7, which are Dragonzord and Tyrannosaurus, and then I have Mastodon, and then I have Saber-tooth Tiger from Bandai. All right. And in order to round out the team, I was like, well, there's nobody else that makes Zords to this scale that have that chunky look to them that we saw on the show. And so then I turned to Imaginext. And Imaginext, which I think is owned by, I believe Fisher Price, I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I saw that they came out with Zords a few years back, and I said, you know what? I looked at the Triceratops from their line, and I said, you know, that's got a lot of detail on it, and it looks just like the one from the show, but it just got all these little kiddie functions on it. You know, there's playable features that were made for kids that are like, I guess, like, you know, 5 and under or whatever. And so I said, well, I wonder if I can mod that and add it to the collection, because for the most part, I didn't really, you know, everything was already there, which I'm going to move this one. We'll get into this one here in a bit, because that one was a doozy. But most of everything was already there on this one from Imaginext. It just had some inaccurate paint details, but and I went back and I panel lined it on there. I went back and spray painted the tail, filled in the little whatever on the tail, and added some just some detail parts. I didn't fill this in. I was originally gonna fill this in with epoxy sculpt and try to make it more accurate, but I was like, you know what, whatever, it's no big deal. I just spray paint it and keep it moving. I actually did think that was pretty cool how they have they have the little designs from the Ranger cockpits from the show. They had them built in on the Imaginext Zords, which I thought was pretty cool. And it does have this little feature on it where you push you push down on this and the head extends out, which was cool. So it gives it some kind of articulation, but the tail and stuff does move. I don't move the tail that much, but the tail does move, and it does flip up and down. Now this tail is actually one of the things about Fisher Price, where they make these unrealistic proportions of some of the parts of the Zords. So the tail is oversized. The cannons on there should be thinner and smaller for it to be actually accurate, but the body size is actually more so in line and in scale with the other Zords. And then the head is a little oversized than it should be in comparison to the other Zords. So that's one of the things that Imaginext did, was they made, you know, more kid friendly. So they gave it oversized proportions in some areas, which mainly being the head and the tail. But I can work around it because it's still a very nicely detailed head. Pause again. But I thought that was, you know, cool. But they didn't. This was gray, and I had to just basically go back and just do some touch-up paint. I painted the feet silver, and then I touched up on the little vents and the intake areas on here. I actually painted this part because this section right here was red, and I went back and painted it silver, and then went back and filled it in with some black paint on that section so it looks more accurate to the show. And you can see all the little details. I painted this white, went back and painted the little design on his head yellow. One of the things that I did do that I had to do some reconstructing on, just to kind of give it more of a detailed look, was the horns. And what I had to do was, not only did I go back and I'll get to that part in a minute, but I wanted them to look longer, because in the series they actually have a longer look to them, and they're pointier. The ones we had on here were they were a little stubbier. They look cool, but they were stubbier, and I wasn't feeling how they looked. So what I did was, they had the little designs that are on there. I don't know if you can see, but right there in that section, so I can get it to focus, there's a section right along here where I cut. And I cut that part off with an X-Acto knife. And then I blended two versions. So what I did was, I took the Hasbro, that little cheap Hasbro version of Megazord they released, which was their first Zord they ever did. I took the Triceratops from that one, and I took the horns, and I don't know if I still have that with me right now, which I think I do. Let me see. So I took the horns from that little cheap Megazord that they had that has been released. And because they were already long and pointy, they had the designs on them already, and they had more detail on the ends, unlike the Imaginext ones. When I cut the Imaginext ones off, I took the ones from this Triceratops, and they had a peg on them. And once I did that, I just drilled into that little section where I cut and made a hole to fit that peg, and I pegged those in, and it fit almost seamlessly because you really can't tell that there's two separate sections for the most part. And then I went back and spray painted them, and it came out great. Like more surprising because I did that by accident. I wasn't expecting to do that because initially I was gonna try to take this head off and add this head on there so it could probably fit a little better as far as like scaling wise. But this head is too small, this one's too big, but this one has the better detail and looks more like the show. So that's what I went with on that one. And now for the parlor trick that I decided to do, and I've not seen anybody else do this except for SOC. I'm gonna have to back this up, get some space to do this. I wanted to add in a feature that is known for the Triceratops, and that feature would be the removable horns, if I can get it out, that have the chains inside them that he shoots out on the show. And I went to, I knew I wanted to add that feature in there because I thought that was a cool feature. And again, I don't like touching my SOC Megazord too much and fidgeting around with it because of how expensive it is. So what I did was when I had to pull out the original horns first, which I had to break them off because whatever piece of plastic they had, I couldn't, it was hard like to get a clean break on it because I wanted to save the peg for it, but I couldn't really do it because I had to break it in order to get on there. But once I broke them off of there, I went to Michael's and got these chains, and they have like little loop. They have like a bigger loop on the very end of them. I think they're about like 12 inches each, and they got like a loop on the end of them. And I don't know if you can see down in there. I took a screw and I drilled in there, and then I took a screw and I stuck it on the end of the screw so that way they can hold. It has holding power, and I screwed those in there so it holds. And surprisingly enough, there's enough space and clearance inside the head of this thing to fit all those chains. Now, I did actually, I had multiple screws. I think I took the screws from the body of this Triceratops to use to do that. And in doing so, I think I lost one screw that's down, that's in there somewhere. So there's a piece, an extra screw that I lost in there. And then there's also a bit of plastic from the original horns that I broke off, and it also fell down in there. And somehow these chains, I can still get them to fit inside the Triceratops. When I can retract them and put them back in there. And I put them back in the same way I put in the SOC. You just take them and you just kind of like just work them until they fall back down in there. The only problem I have is that these horns here, they don't, on the ends, because I had to break off that peg, I had to go back and try to use epoxy scope. And it held the chain itself to the horn really well. The only problem is that if you can see on there, I had to sculpt the peg on there with the epoxy scope, and sometimes it holds in there, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it falls out. But either way, it stays in for the most part. But I thought it was a cool feature to be able to have the horn or to have the chain shoot out with the horns on this thing, which would be great for figure photography. Also, I actually have the Lightning Collection Minotaur, and I think that was the actual monster that he used that feature on, that we actually saw that feature used on. So I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, that one came out nice for a 5-year-old child's toy to fit in with a collector's line. I thought that was pretty cool. And I'll put those back in after I do the video because these are hard to work. I mean, they're not hard to work back in, but I need both hands, and I'm holding the camera with one hand and fidgeting with the other one. So, and then last but not least was this one that I had to do the absolute most work on, and that would be the pterodactyl. And I had to really Frankenstein this one, and I knew I would have to do that just because of the fact that this one had like the most like, the thing I liked about this Zord, or about this one from Imaginext, is that it was the only one that had like this shape, like the actual accurate shape of the chest piece to the actual one on the show. And I knew I wanted to use that one because I was going to use this one also, but again, these are too small to use. So I had to Frankenstein this one to add pieces to this to get it to do what I wanted to do to look more accurate. For the most part, again, it had all the details and features with the vents and stuff. And then, but I had to, I don't even know where to start with this thing. I had to cut the wings down because the wings were really big and bulky, and they weren't as sharp as they needed to be and pointy. So I had to cut off a whole section of this wing that was like just unnecessarily on there. And then on top of that, luckily for me, the little feature on top that comes on top of this thing, it had like a little like thing where you put the figure on and it spins and it does, the wings flap. Well, luckily I was able to unscrew that and it just came right off. And then this was, they had like these guns on here that these big clunky cannons that came on the side of it that I ended up taking off. And what I did was those unscrewed out and I ended up filling that in with epoxy and going back and painting over it. And then I took the decal. I don't have to screw it in because I just finished doing this the other day. But I actually had a decal on the front of it and I had to take that off, and then I had to go back and repaint the front of this again and then draw that chest plate design on there with a gun. Well, I used the old Gundam pen, and I used some black paint, and I just kind of drew the lines on there with a ruler or a little card ruler or whatever. And then right here on the front of the chest right here, this is one solid yellow bar or like one solid design on there. But the way it came, it was a gap in here on this part. And so I took some epoxy scope and filled it in, smoothed it out, and then painted over it. And then that actually came out. And then I painted back over that part, came out the way I wanted it to. So yeah, that was the front of this thing. As far as the neck goes and the head, it had a mouth on it, but I don't think we actually see a mouth on the pterodactyl Zord on the show. So I tore the mouth off and ripped the jaw off like you would do a gator, broke his jaw. I ain't never broke no gator jaw before, but I heard that's how you gotta do it. Take both hands and twist them in different directions and it rips off. That's, I guess that's what the country boys do down there in Florida. Yeah, I took the mouth off of this thing, and then I took a rotary tool and then chiseled down the rest of the head and gave it the shape of the show until I got it right where I got to the design that I wanted. And then, I mean, that came out, like I said, a lot of work, but came out the way I wanted to, and I'm pleased with how it turned out. And so then from there, they already had some designs on the front, and what I did was I just like taped it off, and repainted them, did some panel lining. There's panel lining on like the head right there, and that wasn't there. And what I had to do for that was I took an X-Acto knife and kind of carved the design out where the panel line should be on it, and then went back and filled it in with paint, or black paint, and drew over it. And then I would make a panel line in these areas. I had to go back and add epoxy scope on this section here after cutting into this part and cutting that part off, because there was like a whole bunch of there was like little notches where the little play feature thing was held into place, and I just had to take the rotary tool and cut that off, smooth it down. I went back and added epoxy scope, and then took an X-Acto and shaped it out how I wanted it. Got it real smooth, about as smooth as I could be, and then decided, it wasn't smooth enough, so I took some styrene sheets and then I went and cut them and then lined them up, painted them with the pterodactyl design, and then I super glued them on there. I went back and added these vents on here because they have like 2 extra vents. The pterodactyl Zord don't get enough credit because we've always gotten like little versions of it like this, where it's just like all the detail and stuff on the inside is left out because it has to be able to transform, so it's just hollow and you don't have any anything on the inside. But there's like all kind. This thing looks like a jet when you look at the actual design of the pterodactyl, and when you see it, the actual show version of it, it does look like a jet, and so it's got like these fins and wings on it on the back. And so these already came on there. That was a piece that was screwed in there with it. These are the ones that were actually the end pieces on this, and they were perfect. And I just took an X-Acto and cut them off, and they fit right on this thing just the way you would want them to. I glued them on there. It's almost like they were meant to go there. And then when I did these vents, I epoxy sculpted them around that fin to actually hold them there better after I glued them, so that way they wouldn't just break off easily. So that came out perfect, almost like it was meant to happen. And even with this part, there was a circular section here that was hollowed out, and I went back and added epoxy scope there and filled it in, and then carved and shaped it, and then molded it to look, like it fit there. For the neck, it didn't have articulation. It had one solid neck piece, that was stuck out. So when you unscrewed it, the head came off, and then there was like this protruding like solid neck piece that went right there, and it didn't move or anything like that. You just kind of slid the head in place on it and screwed it in. And so I sawed that off, and then decided to take the articulated section from this pterodactyl, and I cut it out, painted it, and it actually had the original head from the pterodactyl on there, and I stuck it. It fit almost perfect. Once I cut the mouth off of this thing, I stuck the original head from the other one under there, and then I put a boxoscope around that and shaped it around it so that way it would hold on there, and it would basically be able to attach to the neck joint on there. And now I added that neck joint on there, and now you have articulation on this thing. As you can see, the neck bends and articulates, and you can stand it up. Hopefully this thing does not come apart while I'm raising it up because it's not screwed in. But yeah, it does that, and it bends now. So that is the majority of what I did to that one. And like I said, when you hold these all together, they look great. They're not perfect, but for a make-do or makeshift project to get like, you know, just some Zords in their regular Zord form, they all function and fit together. Like I said, I'm happy with it as a Power Rangers fan. If you want any tips on how I did it, you can hit me up on my Instagram, which is @PlasticReality. That's plastic, PLA. Basically, it's my name, the same exact name that I have for my YouTube channel. Hit me up on there. I can give you some tips on what I did, paints I use, and so forth. But yeah, like I said, it was a fun project. It took longer than I thought it was going to be because I had to figure out. I was kind of figuring some things out along the way as I was doing it. But like I said, man, I'm happy to have these in my collection as my Zords, so they work for me. But yeah, that's all I got on this one, guys. If you're watching, thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, and like I said, I've looked forward to bringing more customs and things like that to you guys. I actually got some more projects lined up. I got to finish doing my Batman and Robin Batmobile. I put a pause on that one to work on these, and that's been like maybe like a few months now. So that's going to be next on my to-do list as far as customs go, and hopefully that will be it for customs for a while for me, because I'm kind of like, you know, I ain't gonna lie, I'm kind of getting a little, I need to break from doing customs. And I know McFarlane's got their, I heard there's a rumor that the 66 Batmobile is they're gonna be doing that one. And I know they got the Justice League Batmobile coming out, which means they'll probably do a second version of the BVS Batmobile, which is the one I want, and that's the one I'm gonna get. So if they don't release it and they just do the Justice League one, that means I will have another customization project with that one that I need to do. But yeah, man, this is like I said, it's been fun. And like I said, thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.